Is time travel possible? Whether you believe so or not, I hope to convince you today that it isn't, and also that it is. Allow yourself to be entertained for just a moment by suspending whatever disbelief you might have. What would you do if you were able to go back in time? Would you go as far back as the dinosaurs? Maybe be a witness to certain historic events in history. Maybe you might wish to change an event that has led you to experiencing regrets today. How about traveling to the future? Would you like to find out who wins the next World Series and maybe put some money on it? Would you like to know how current efforts of yours will turn out in a job or some other project? Maybe you'd like to check in on someone's future welfare to make sure they turn out all right. The cinematic world abounds with time travel movies. There are modern movies about robots and robots from the future, or a scientist who meets himself in the past. And there are also classic Christmas movies of characters who wish they were never born, and others who get to see what their own dismal future could look like. Where might this fascination with time travel come from? Why do people dream of going back to the future or forward to the past? Whatever happened to just being present in the present and living in the now? What? What's that you say? You don't dream of traveling in time? You don't have some deep desire to right the wrongs of the past or get a peek into the future? Well, your time travel may not look like the movies, but I would bet you have some fascination or preoccupation with the past and the future. Let me put it this way. Would you describe yourself as enjoying complete, total, and utter pleasantness of life and happiness? Do you have peace of mind from waking until sleeping? In Swedenborg's Spiritual Experiences, he writes, "Conjecture about things to come and the memory of things past are what take away all the pleasantness of life and happiness. They cause worry, cares, and anxiety." Our emotional and spiritual states are very much like spiritual locations, and you can't be in two locations at once. Like the Israelites could either be in the promised land or out of the promised land. We cannot be both worrying about the past and future and have pleasantness of life and happiness. What does worry about the past look like? Whether it's 10 years ago, 1 month ago, 5 minutes ago, our worry about the past could show up like any of these: wishing things had happened differently, constant regret over our actions, wishing the present could go back to the way it was in the past, harboring negative feelings or thoughts towards somebody for anything that happened in the past. All of these things cause us to live in the past, and they take us away from the present. Sure, when things are difficult in the present, it feels nice to spend time in a past state and wish that the present could be that way again. But living in those memories is no more than a cheaply made Band-Aid that falls off at the first drop of water. And worry about the future? What if this happens? And what if that happens? Our thoughts of the future have us worrying about all the things we need to do and about the ramifications and fallout of all of our actions and words from moment to moment. Will there be enough money? What will happen with this job? What will people think of me? What if I fail my kids and my family? So again, do you enjoy utter and complete pleasantness of life and happiness? We concern ourselves with the past and the future because we are trying to ensure our own happiness. We're trying to control the situation, and yet we have no control over these things called the past and the future. We are trying to extract happiness and peace out of these things that will never be realities in which we can live, and which really only exist as fantasies in our minds. And that brings us back to one of those matters of which I hoped to convince you today, that time travel is not, nor ever will be possible. I don't believe we will ever be able to have this capability in this natural realm due to some spiritual principles. Firstly and foremostly, the ability to go back and change events of the past would imply that God got it wrong and that his providence is fallible. And I'm not willing to go out on that rotten limb. Secondly, and also importantly, all of the events of our past are important parts of who we are, and that includes our mistakes and events that we perceive as negative experiences. The Lord doesn't take them away, and neither can we. We want to change events of the past because we think our lives are happy or sad, good or bad, because of those events. But this isn't the case. Our spiritual quality is from a spiritual source, not a natural one. Frankly, time travel would be a total waste of time if we intend to use it to become happy. I did tell you that I intend to convince you that time travel is possible today, but you'll just have to wait 5 minutes into the future for that one. The purpose of all this time travel talk is really to home in on our own story, on our story for the day. The daily manna that the Israelites received in the wilderness for 40 years. I'd like to start with a disposition of the children of Israel. It was ghastly. It was horrible. It was selfish. It was overbearing and impatient. It was just like us. Oh, that we had died in Egypt when we sat by the pots of meat. In other words, oh, that we could return to the past, which would enable us to escape from this growth opportunity. In the deeper meaning here, it depicts our desire to revert to a place of simply knowing and learning things and not having to apply them. It's quite satisfying to learn that not murdering means not attacking somebody's spirit, but actually living that principle is quite uncomfortable because sometimes we think they deserve it. And again, it's satisfying to learn that we ought to trust in the Lord's providence and that he leads all toward a good end, but it's easier in the moment to complain that the Lord or people or the world has ruined one perfect moment or our entire life. So what does the Lord do? No, he doesn't smite them. He gives them what they need. He provides them with daily bread and quail. The daily bread is spiritual goodness that nourishes our spirits. It provides us with a sense of fulfillment, pleasantness, happiness. The quail symbolize the tangible delights and good feelings that the Lord gives us, the things that we actually experience in our senses. By the way, the Lord didn't do this for the Israelites just once or a couple of times a year. This was daily, manna in the morning, quail in the evening, 40 years. This daily bread doesn't simply mean a daily provision of goodness, happiness, and pleasantness for us. It means perpetual provision of awesome wonderfulness. Those are my words. Perpetual, this part means repeatedly or so frequently as to seem endless and uninterrupted. Can you imagine experiencing seemingly endless and uninterrupted awesome wonderfulness? #life goal. This is what we get to work toward. This is what we get more and more to the degree that it is not hindered by our preoccupation with the past and the future. Every time we say the Lord's Prayer, we say the words, "Give us this day our daily bread." Wait, but the Lord's always giving it. We are really asking him to help us receive that bread and to be aware of it. You see, our ego, our proprium, isn't content with what it is provided. It's not content with what it has right now. It wants to be preoccupied with the past or look forward to a future when it can get more. It's happy to live in these fantasies that don't exist because it takes us away from the present where loving our neighbor really does take place. But we'll never be happy with what we want until we can be happy with what we have. And the beautiful thing is that if we become happy with what we have, in other words, what the Lord has provided us, then we will no longer depend on the past or the future for our happiness. By the way, reflecting on the past and thought of the future all by itself is not harmful. After all, the Lord constantly reminds the Israelites of past times when they did and didn't follow him and how that went for them. Recall also that the Lord told Pharaoh through Joseph to store up grain for 7 years of famine. And this is where true time travel comes in. You see, time travel is possible, or rather, the purposes of time travel can be achieved right here in the present. We can actually fix past mistakes by reflecting on them, seeing what went wrong in us, not out there, and working to amend that in the present. And the future? The purpose of going into the future would be to see that all turns out well, and to see if what we are doing even matters. The answer is yes and yes. Everything will turn out fine in the future because the Lord is and always has and always will take care of things. The more we trust in that right now, in the present, then the more that will come true for us in all of the future nows. And everything we do always matters, although it might not matter in the way that we expect it to. The time zone that we live in is very much related to our regeneration. Our efforts in this world are to become more and more like angels, which are people that have no cares for the past or future. It's easy to talk about living in the present, but it's not an easy thing to do. Here are just a few examples of ways that you can practice being present. Imagine if you could be perfectly and totally content to be right where you are and doing whatever you are doing with your life. Next time you feel a cool breeze or the warm sun on your face, or when you hear the beautiful music at the end of this service, close your eyes. Try to imagine that you are experiencing it for the first time ever. Don't name it or try to qualify it. Just let it affect you. And next time you are with a loved one or a neighbor, try to leave behind all the baggage of preconceptions that you have about that person, and just be with that person as if it was your first time ever with them. Every moment we have a choice. We can choose to live in the past or the future with worries, regrets, dreams, apprehensions. Or we can choose to live right now in the Lord's daily bread, his perpetual, unending, uninterrupted, awesome wonderfulness. Amen.